In the narrow, dark alley of the slum, where moans and the smell of blood had become familiar, an unanticipated brawl erupted. Aster, with eyes cold as steel, threw the first punch. The strike was so powerful it created a shockwave, making the air vibrate and dust fly everywhere. The first thug took the full force, his face twisted, eyes rolled back, blood splattering all over the ground. Aster didn't stop. He broke into a challenging smile, almost enjoying seeing his opponent trembling before him. The second punch, the third, then a rapid series of blows landed so fast they were just blurs in the air. From a distant corner, Damien, the fearless boy, simply widened his eyes in amazement and softly exclaimed, "Whoa!" Aster clenched his fist tightly. This was the Archmage's fighting technique. Use mana, clench your fist, attack continuously, quickly. Damien followed each of Aster's punches, his eyes shining brightly with admiration. To him, this was not violence, but something beautiful, a true power. Aster heard him, glanced at the boy lightly, then said jokingly, but with no less danger, "Damien, that's what people call awesome." Damien smiled brightly, clenched both fists, and shouted excitedly, "Wow, that's amazing." The battle ended quickly. The enemies lay motionless on the ground, breathing weakly. Damien showed no fear. He knelt beside the wounded man, his eyes clear and full of curiosity. The boy's small hand radiated a gentle golden light. A magical circle appeared, swirling around the person's body. "It won't hurt," Damien whispered softly. "I will heal you." The light spread, enveloping the bloodied wound, causing it to gradually close. The thug was still dazed, opening his eyes to look at the boy with astonishment and trembling, stammering, "Thank you." Aster's fury had not abated. Even as Damien healed their enemy, his gaze remained as sharp as a blade. Amidst the suffocating silence, Aster grabbed the thug by the collar, coldly lifting him up, his eyes gleaming with the power of life and death. He tilted his head, offering a half-smile, and asked softly, but his words carried a pressure that made it hard to breathe, "How many times have you been beaten?" The thug trembled, unable to meet his gaze, his lips moving but uttering no word. Then, a dry, sharp sound rang out, quick and decisive. He screamed pitifully, "AAA!" The sunset had dyed the entire sky a brilliant orange and purple. Amid the poetic scene of twilight, at the foot of the old brick wall, the other thugs lay fallen. Their bodies were scattered on the ground, motionless, surrounded by dark streaks of blood. No one dared to resist anymore. Everything was swallowed by a dense silence of defeat and fear. Aster relaxed his body, breathing heavily after exerting all his strength. Sweat trailed down his bare skin, glistening under the sunset light. He took a slow, deep breath, the mana within him fluctuating sharply before gradually stabilizing. A soft hoo-hoo echoed. It was unclear whether it was an exhale or simply a release of fatigue after the fury. Below, the last thug still tried to crawl, his body curled up, his mouth weakly groaning. But before he could drag himself away, Aster grabbed his collar and yanked him back. His face showed no emotion, only a voice cold as steel spoke. "How many times have you been beaten?" The pitiful man trembled, his lips turning blue, his voice faltering with fear. I've forgotten." The air around him heated up, as if the whole world was suffocating him with that single question. Then, within the thickened atmosphere, Damien stepped forward. The boy still wore a bright smile, eyes shining as if everything that had just happened was nothing more than an amusing joke. Clenching both fists, his clear voice rang out eagerly, "Wow, is it my turn now?" The punishment had not yet stopped. The dim yellow light cast shadows on the thug's distorted face, where sweat and blood mixed into streaks. His eyes rolled back, lips trembling as he tried to retreat. Rapid breaths and hoarse groans mingled in the suffocating air. He screamed in desperation, "Hey, stop it right now." In stark contrast to the blood-soaked scene, Damien was like a child watching a wonderful performance. The boy grinned brightly, his eyes sparkling and reflecting the lights, fists clenched in excitement. His voice rang out high, innocent yet wild. "Play the healing game. Play the healing game." Aster glanced lightly over his shoulder, his lips curling into a brief, icy agreement as if a secret language passed between them. Punishment is art. The one being beaten was almost completely broken. His voice screamed hoarsely, "Stop, you demons!" But no one answered. Only Aster's breathing, steady and cold, accompanied by the faint smile fading from Damien's lips. That terrifying silence was even more dreadful than the torture itself. Under the pale moonlight, Aster and Damien walked through the ruins left by the punishment. One, cold, put on his torn shirt. The other skipped about as if just finishing a stroll. Aster did not look back. His voice was soft but laden with irony. Thank you for today. A farewell both mocking and like a ritual marking the end of the bloody training. Behind them, the surviving thugs bowed deeply. Trembling all over, they echoed in choked voices, like slaves thanking their master. Thank you for today. Those trembling syllables echoed through the emptiness, sounding both pathetic and chilling. Aster's inner voice sounded, steady and precise like a report. I'm also proud to have successfully landed over 100 strikes on each person, totaling more than 1,000 punches. This is a new challenge, even for me, a seasoned problem solver. Each number seemed to reflect how he turned violence into a science, exact, emotionless, and entirely purposeful. The ringleader bowed deeply, his shoulders trembling violently, his lips uttering scattered sobbing sounds. Can we go now? I think that's enough. Aster stopped, his tone calm as if having an everyday conversation. Ah, all right. You may leave now. That casual phrase made the whole group feel as if they had just been granted a pardon. He hung his head, crawling away trembling, as if fearing that just turning around would mean being hit again. He whispered in a timid, fearful voice, "But this is my home." Aster suddenly changed expression, his eyes filled with threatening murderous intent, causing the man to force a strained smile. "Oh, get out of here. No, we'll retreat." As the group gradually retreated, Aster stood still, his eyes following their backs carrying fear. He thought silently, this is not hatred. It was absolute submission, the very thing Aster always sought to instill. Aster slightly tilted his head, looking at the one who had just spoken, his voice low and calm. That was really difficult. The vague but suggestive remark showed he knew what was coming next would not be as easy to handle as those just now. Aster and Damien stood at the end of the alley, waving as if bidding farewell to guests. Damien still smiled brightly, his eyes sparkling in the moonlight, while Aster remained silent, his gaze intently following each retreating step of the enemy. The atmosphere suddenly shifted. Aster furrowed his brow, clearly sensing a powerful energy approaching. Someone is coming. He lowered his voice, alert, as the strands of hair around his neck gently stirred with the thin flow of mana. A stream of blazing red mana spread throughout the space. The magical light stained the old brick wall, making everything seem dark and oppressive. Aster sensed a magic-infused entity drawing near, a strong energy enveloping the entire area. His eyes grew sharp and cold, his lips softly parting. It's fast, but secretive. A unique presence. Just like a troubleshooter. Aster straightened up, the mana around him rising like a thin mist, a sign that he was ready. Aster squinted, his expression cold and taut like a drawn bowstring. From his stance, absolute vigilance was clear. His low, firm voice sounded, perhaps, a pursuer. A dangerous one was approaching, and Aster knew it. Amid the heavy air, only one remained unaffected, Damien. The boy stood nearby, his eyes still innocent, not trembling at all. Amid the approaching storm of mana, his smile was a strange light, both innocent and unusual. Aster furrowed his brows, a surge of questions rising in his mind. I have been careful in my own way. So how did they find me? It can't be. The Blander family came first. His inner voice mixed suspicion and caution, like a beast about to strike. Aster took a deep breath, spreading his palm open. Pure mana flowed from his body, enveloping his arm in a brilliant silver-blue light, powerful and pure enough to make the air tremble. If it's mana like this, he whispered, more as a warning than an observation. His gaze darkened, filled with self-awareness. Even a single spell is hard to cast. Fighting hand-to-hand won't be easy. That is not good. These words contained no fear, but a cold analysis as he prepared for the worst-case scenario. Finally, Aster looked at himself in the reflection of the silver-bright moonlight through his pupil. His voice rang out deep, clear, and carrying a special authority. But who am I? That question echoed in the silent space, like the beginning of a new chapter where the true identity of the trouble resolver was about to be revealed. Under the silver moonlight, Aster stood silently amidst the ruins of the recent battle. His body was drenched in sweat, his breath heavy, but his eyes shone with a rare determination. A stream of memories echoed in his mind. Even when I was just a troubleshooter, I never once possessed an abundance of magical power. He closed his eyes softly, sensing the mana surging through his veins. I have lived too long in danger. This kind of situation is no stranger to me. A massive surge of energy suddenly erupted around Aster. Under the moonlight, his body brimmed with strength, pure mana flowing along every muscle fiber, creating streaks of light like lightning slicing through the darkness. Now, he was no longer the weak troubleshooter of the past, but a true archmage, ready to give everything to protect his new life. He raised his hand, his deep voice resonating in the air. Gather all mana. A radiant magic circle appeared in his palm, spinning and contracting like a miniature whirlwind. The swirling mana grew stronger, obeying his every command. Compress, and compress once more. The atmosphere twisted, a blinding white light enveloping Aster's entire body. He clenched his teeth, his body trembling under the extreme pressure of compressed mana. Then he slowly opened his eyes, his voice hoarse from the intense strain. This is enough. A burst of white light flared up. His eyes were sharp as knives, filled with terrifying determination and clarity. He bent down, channeling all his energy into a counterattack spell. The magic circle at his feet spun violently, then exploded into a radiant pillar of light. This is the only chance. It was the gamble of someone who had bet their entire life on a single strike. An intensely compressed mana surged out like a storm of energy, sweeping away everything nearby. The ground trembled, and the white light dazzled the vision. As the wind's roar gradually faded, Aster collapsed to his knees. His body trembled, breath ragged, yet his gaze never left the outcome before him. A shout rang out in the dust cloud. "Oh my God, young master." It was Alfredo, the Blander family's butler, rushing forward. "Alfredo!" Damien cried out in horror, eyes wide in disbelief at the scene before him. The scene quickly descended into chaos. Alfredo's voice trembled. "I've been looking for you for who knows how long. Where have you been? And what the hell have you been doing, young master?" Damien struggled in panic. "Ah, no, let me go." Aster stood silently behind, his eyes cold as ice, observing the entire spectacle. He did not intervene, only watched, as if watching a scene from a play whose outcome he knew all too well. Alfredo shouted, his voice choked with emotion. This poor butler hasn't been able to close his eyes even for a moment, worried sick about the young master. Damien resisted even more fiercely, tears mixing with sweat. "I will not go back. I won't let you leave unless I return to the family. Kill me if you must." Alfredo was almost desperate. "My heavens, young master, running away from the family is considered desertion." Aster frowned slightly. To him, this was not a moving reunion. Rather, it was just a noisy act between two people from different worlds. When the atmosphere finally softened, Aster stepped forward. Alfredo released Damien and bowed formally. "I am Alfredo, the butler of the Blander family." Aster responded softly, his voice cold and calm. "Ah, yes, I am Asta." Alfredo gave a courteous smile, but his eyes held a keen observation. "It seems that young Master Damien truly cares deeply for you. If you don't mind, could you come with us back to the family?" Aster raised an eyebrow slightly. "Back to the Blander family?" His eyes flashed with a glint of calculation. Inside his mind, a low internal voice sounded. The basic rule of prestigious families is to reject all things filthy and avoid anything noble. I don't understand what they are scheming. Then he smiled faintly, that familiar, cunning smile. "Well, it doesn't matter, because I'm planning to find a way to establish connections with the Blander family." The air seemed to freeze for a moment. A newly reborn archmage had begun to plot the next move in the game. The real goal appeared in his mind. Zenyun Academy, the school reputed to be the best in the East, and its library is also the place housing the utmost knowledge. He slightly curled his lips, a calculating smile emerging clearly. "I will build the best library, so it wouldn't be bad to take this opportunity to stop by and have a look." "Yes, I understand. Thank you for your help." Alfredo nodded, his voice calm but somewhat weary. "Then I will go get the carriage. Please wait a moment." Aster adjusted his cloak, his breath exhaling thin mist into the night air. He silently thought, "I have slightly deviated from my original path, the path to building my library. But good is still good." He raised his head to look at the sky, his silver eyes reflecting the moonlight, a faint smile playing on his lips. "All right, now, let's see if the Blander family's food is delicious." After a long journey, the sound of the carriage driver's voice rang out cheerfully. "We have arrived, young sirs." The luxurious carriage stopped before the large gate. This was the Blander family, one of the strongest clans. Aster opened the door and stepped down. The sound of his leather shoes echoed softly on the stone-paved floor, steady and sure. He raised his head to look up at the gigantic mansion before him where light reflected off white stone walls and intricately carved windows. In that gaze, there was no astonishment, only a cold appraisal. "Is this the first time I am coming here officially?" The gates opened wide, and the ranks of servants and stewards lined up waiting. They bowed their heads respectfully, the atmosphere filled with solemnity and order. Aster, a reincarnated archmage, had stepped into the center of power he intended to manipulate. Alfredo, still maintaining his stern demeanor, handed over responsibility to a brown-haired woman waiting under the porch. It's late already. Let them rest comfortably. Lancy, I'm counting on you. The girl nodded slightly, her voice brief. Yes. Lancy stepped forward, her gaze cold and sharp like a blade. She looked at Damien, who now shrank away like a frightened child, and spoke with an emotionless tone. Please follow me, young Master Damien. The boy swallowed thickly and stammered, Lancy. Meanwhile, Alfredo quietly turned away. His shadow stretched long over the cold green stone floor of the corridor, each step belonging to a man who had dedicated his life to the family's honor. He stopped before a large door, took a deep breath, then knocked softly. A deep but authoritative voice called from inside, Enter. Alfredo stepped in. The warm golden light illuminated his solemn face. Behind the large desk, a woman with fiery red hair sat upright, exuding the power and pride of one who had ruled an entire domain with iron will. Alfredo bowed his head and began his report. Young Master Damien was found in the 7th Black and White District. I have just brought him back. Immediately, a loud bang echoed. A burst of light flared up around the desk, radiating intense heat. A hand gently controlled the magic circle, the 7th Black and White Zone. Her voice thundered like thunder. The flames in her hand blazed even stronger, embers flying chaotically around the room. Is Damien okay? Nothing has happened to the boy, right? She stood up abruptly, her eyes glowing fiercely with red magic, her voice full of menace. If even a single strand of my son's hair is harmed. At that moment, the powerful matriarch of the Blandor family and Damien's mother was revealed. Alfredo immediately lowered his head, his tone serious but reassuring. Mistress, please calm down and listen to me first. She took a deep breath, then slowly sat down. The red light gradually dimmed, leaving pale streaks on her hand. I understand. After hearing the full report, the woman gently closed her eyes, her voice relieved. It's a relief. The red mana still swirled around her hand like embers not quite extinguished. Alfredo nodded, his tense face now somewhat relaxed. Yes, it's a relief, he thought to himself. That is fortunate for the mistress and also fortunate for whoever dared to challenge the young master. Because he knew who the lady was, the fury of the woman before him, once renowned as the Blood Witch, famous everywhere, the head of the prestigious Blandor family. Once she was enraged, who could possibly stop her? A combination of fierce, maternal love and overwhelming magical power. This was the wrath of a mother, a figure whose name once made the entire region tremble. After a few seconds of silence, she leaned back in her chair, her stern expression returning. Every word she uttered carried the authority of a leader. The atmosphere in the room softened, but her imposing presence still compelled others to bow their heads. The mistress gave a slight nod, her voice gentle yet resonating with power. In any case, you have all worked very hard. Alfredo bowed deeply, his calm and humble demeanor evident on his aged face. Do not mind it, it is my duty. However, there is an unusual matter to note, the butler continued. The mistress tilted her head, her gaze sharp as a blade. Unusual? Alfredo replied with a cold, slow expression. I am speaking of the friend young Master Damien recently befriended, named Aster. A brief silence followed. The mistress's eyes flickered with curiosity mixed with caution. Aster? Alfredo closed his eyes, the corner of his mouth curling up, his voice deep and icy. He discovered my presence. Before I could appear, he was already ready to counterattack. And when we faced each other, the thing the boy held was a mana bullet. The matron gently crossed her arms, her gaze full of admiration. A mana bullet, from a child of the Black and White Zone? Truly astonishing. Such a talent cannot be wasted. Alfredo, with a scheming look, took advantage of the moment to bow slightly, half in respect, half in encouragement. That is precisely why, madam. He raised his head, his eyes sharp as if he had already calculated every move. May I ask you for a favor? A fleeting smile appeared on his lips, the smile of someone who had already set the board in motion. Scene change. Morning sunlight bathed the magnificent Blandor mansion. The birdsong sounded as a herald for the beginning of a new chapter. On the stone-paved courtyard, Alfredo appeared with a dignified posture, his suit jacket fitting snugly over his muscular frame, arms outstretched amidst the radiant light. His voice resonated confidently as he said to Aster, Please, become the heir of the Blandor family. Those words struck like lightning in a clear sky. Aster, standing before him, was completely stunned. His eyes wide and brow slightly furrowed. He did not expect such a proposal, both reckless and dangerous. Alfredo chuckled softly, his tone filled with pride. He. Surprised, aren't you? But I believe you simply can't refuse. His voice rang out with enthusiasm, almost triumphant. A rare opportunity. From a wanderer in the black and white zone. You can gain honor, wealth, and status. Isn't becoming the heir steward of a prestigious family a dream? And then, the answer rang out, brief but like a punch straight to his pride. No. Alfredo's face froze. His eyes widened in surprise. The scene seemed to freeze the entire space. The butler of the Blandorn family was stunned. Did I hear that wrong? A whisper echoed somewhere. But Aster just stood upright, hand resting on his hip, his eyes shining with absolute confidence.